I will more talk about governance than a government,
Okay.
because there's a governance here. It's a combination, I would say, of three types of institutions. It is a strong and comprehensive union movement. That means that workers are organized in unions, and unions are sort of cooperating together. They have local representatives at the workplace, and they also have national negotiation that determines basically the wage structure of the country. So that's one set of institutions. And you have to add here that there are also very strong employers associations, stronger than in most other countries. That means that workers become strong because they have a counterpart that is organized in the same level as themselves, so they can make deals, credible deals.
So we call it the three-part negotiations, where you have the state, you have the unions, and you have the employee organizations. Employer, sorry.
Okay,
sorry. Employer organizations. They are meeting up and they are negotiating for the terms for a certain market. So, for example, for all constructors in Denmark, they will negotiate on next year what should the salary be, and are we changing in any of the terms that might be, well, actually anything from how many hours are you working each week up till paternity leave, maternity leave, something like that. They can negotiate anything actually. Normally it's mostly about the pay, and it's about how big a raise should you get next year. And then they have some numbers from the Danish Statistical Office that sort of follows how's the market developing, and where should we be at, and then you can negotiate out of that. So you can say here in Denmark the terms of how good a working life are you having are actually decided by the parts. So both the employer side and the employee side, and then the state being like the third partner in this. So this makes sure that we don't have a minimum wage in Denmark, set by law.
Mm-hmm.
There is a minimum you can pay, but that minimum is like set out of what we negotiate. So you follow up on what is negotiated. So we don't have a law-based minimum, which we here in Denmark believe is very good, because what we see from many countries is that when you have a law-based minimum, then that law-based minimum is paid for a lot of workers. Here you actually make sure that all workers are sort of raised every year.
Okay. So not having the minimum increases workers' wages.
Yeah.
That's what is happening here.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So that's why you see that Denmark has, among with the other Scandinavian countries, some of the highest salaries and among the European countries, but in the world. That can be good and bad, of course, but in general we would say it's good that we make sure that everyone is rising all the time, to make sure that we can sort of buy exactly the same next year as we can this year, because we know that prices are always increasing, right? Well, most of the time at least. So trying to make sure that everything is sort of just following each other. That's actually what we're trying to do. It's not so much about like that you need to, I need to get a lot more in pay next year because I want to. It's mostly about getting everything to function the best way. And normally you would get it to function to make sure that everyone sort of have the same buying capacity next year as they do this year. When you get a salary, there's also a percentage every month that goes to your retirement, and that is also in the negotiation from the union, the employer organization, and the state. So when they negotiate, they can also negotiate on that. Should we say that percentage of your salary should be higher, and it's the employer who pays it? Meaning that you might say that let's just make it simple. My salary is 100 krona, and then I'll get 20% in retirement, for example. So that would mean that the employer is paying me 120, right? So both of them needs to be taken into account. you have that, and then we also have holiday. Holiday earning, you can say. So you pay every month. That's also part of we pay 12.5% of your salary goes to like a holiday fund, you can say, which makes sure that you have paid holiday every year. So, for example, I have 6 weeks of paid vacation every year. And then I have other things like a couple of days that goes for my kids. I have because I'm in the state, you have 2 days a year per kid. That goes to like, you can say, being a better dad, and like to try to be with your family. So you have things like that, which is sort of put into the salary system. So I pay every month. I'm getting my salary, but a percentage of my salary is then put into retirement and is put into vacation.
Is there a minimum of vacation time that companies are allowed to give?
Yeah. 5.
5 weeks. Okay.
Yeah. You need vacation, and there's also like you need vacation, and there's also like how many hours should you work a week. Here in Denmark, we work 37 hours a week. Then of course a company can get you to work more hours, but then they need to pay for it. Of course, everything is a negotiation. So you can always say that you can get in a situation where you cannot agree. When you can't agree, then we will go into to a strike. Skolda.
Yeah.
We will, of course, people will be demonstrating. They will do that through the negotiation if it's difficult, and then you will go into strike. And of course, that's always a risk of it. But in a way, that's also what we have to in the negotiation room, right? If we don't end up in an agreement, then we know that we can do certain things to each other, like we can withdraw the working power from the market, and then the employers will need workers. And here in Denmark, you don't have like other group of workers. Like that would be very poorly seen. Like if you take a job that it was actually someone who's now on strike. If you do that, that's a very, very negative thing to do. You wouldn't do that because like you would sort of be hated from the system.
And it would negatively affect you the next year anyways.
No. So I don't know. I don't see so many negative sides about it, actually. I would say that whole negotiation system is actually pretty good. As long, of course, as you keep a power balance between the three parts, that everyone has a power. If you're trying to shift power in between these three, then it becomes more difficult. We have had cases. That's mostly when you negotiate for the public sector. Then it becomes a bit difficult because the state and the employer is sort of the same side, right? Because the state is paying, and then it becomes a bit difficult because the unions are sort of in a minority all of a sudden, and then the negotiations are a bit more difficult. And we're discussing on how to solve this issue. We haven't come up with any good solution yet, but in general it's going okay. But we have seen cases of where terms were included that was definitely not well received from the unions and from the workers. So that can happen. But in general, I would say as long as the power balance is there, then everything's good. It's always a question of each company, you can say, and how good a degree of unionization they have within a company. But you can say all the workers can go to a union, and the union will always take you seriously and will always go into your case. So I think we have equal basis on that. If you don't believe that you're working under the terms that you should, then you can go to the union, and the union will make sure to have your case. they will even do the case, so they will give you the juridical help that you need in order to run the case against your employer or whatever you need. So no, that's actually pretty good. Of course, we still have companies trying to get around, as we do with individuals too. I think you will always have that, but we have a decent amount of control on this, trying to control companies if they're following the right, what they promise to do, and trying to figure out that way. And of course, we're trying to have as many people as possible in unions actually being part of the union. Because it's not mandatory that you are in a union. It's optional. So you can choose to be, and a lot of people choose to be, because it makes it easier when you need help. Like, you will still get help, but it's just easier being in a union. You can always call them. You can always get help.